I want to go back and talk about a comparison between two specific shoes, some of the biggest, most well-known groupings or brands of shoes out there. So like we continue to see classic Jordans like the Jordan 1s continue to sell well on the secondary market despite being around for 35 years and seeing hundreds of colorways. And on the flip side, we have shoes like the Yeezy 350s, which at one point were considered the most hype sneakers around, starting to decline after a few years and a few dozen colorways. What do you think makes a shoe timeless, as in how it continues to drive hype, sell out, and resell well for years and years? Is it the style, the backstory and origin, the marketing, or is it something else completely separate?
Yeah, it's a good, just sort of a good understanding or sort of acknowledgement of the way that these two shoes have been changing over time, but are yet still such a huge part of the sneaker world. StockX and really the answer to your question, it's just supply and demand. I mean, this is like Econ 101 at its most basic. And particularly when you have shoes that have so much history, so much liquidity, i.e., so much data in which to prove out the supply and demand, it's even more so. Yeezy 350s are a phenomenal example of, the shoe came out originally, Kanye's, the demand around Kanye, his hype, everything at that moment was probably never higher. And there was no one that was even close to the same platform and parallel that he was on, right? This was pre-Virgil, pre-Travis. So like he stood alone and the demand was extraordinary. And then the shoes, because they were just releasing them, the supply was super limited relative to the demand. And so you had this, just massive premiums that went on top of it. And the shoes sold for a lot. Over time, they've continued to release more and more shoes and put more supply out there because at the end of the day, Adidas is a retail company and they don't make any money when the shoe sells for $1,000 on StockX. They make money when they sell, 1,000 more pairs at Adidas.com. So they've put out more supply. And at the same time, the demand around Kanye hasn't gone away. But it's just less than it was before, right? The demand, you have demand split between Virgil and Travis and everything else. And, Kanye has also done more controversial things between now and then. So again, it's just all supply and demand in order to say, what's out there and who's buying it and who's selling it. And so, timeless is kind of a hard word to define or go through, but at any given moment, it's a function of supply and demand around that shoe. And whereas the supply on any given shoe is 100% localized to just that shoe, right? The supply of shoe X has no bearing on the supply of shoe Y, but the demand does, right? Demand carries over, and if you have a lot of hype shoes before, then the next shoe is more likely to have a little bit demand, that bleeds off of it. So, honestly, like this is why StockX has been successful, because there's never been a great way to quantify demand. And that's really what bids are on StockX, right? A bid is tied to someone's PayPal or their credit card. Like it's a true live bid. So it's actually a true indication of demand at any given time. And that's sort of a little bit, under the covers. But like when you think about the StockX model and what it really shows, like it shows demand. And that's a powerful, powerful thing that you really can't get elsewhere.